I was 3 hours deep into reviewing Henderson Real Estate's financial records when I found it, the kind of detail that makes your gut twist before your brain even catches up. It was just another Thursday night in my Wilshire Boulevard office, the kind where downtown LA traffic hummed 20 floors below and cold Starbucks sat forgotten on my desk. I'd been tracking suspicious real estate transactions for the firm, following money trails through shell companies and offshore accounts. Standard corporate fraud investigation, nothing personal, until I saw her name. R. Morales. Monthly payments, $3,500 exact every single month for 25 years straight. No variation, no missed months. Like clockwork from Henderson's personal account, not the corporate one. The memo line always read, Household Services. 25 years. I stared at that number, my fingers frozen on the keyboard. I was 25 years old, born and raised in East LA while Mom, Rosa Morales, worked as a housekeeper in some Beverly Hills mansion. The same mansion I now realized belonged to Richard Henderson, the real estate mogul currently running for Senate on a platform of family values and personal responsibility. The coincidence felt too perfect, too deliberate. I pulled up my own birth certificate from my files, something I kept for background checks and security clearances, filed away in a folder labeled Personal Documents that I rarely opened. There it was, plain as day. Father's name, blank. Not unknown, not withheld. Just empty, like someone had intentionally left it blank rather than writing anything at all. My hands started shaking. I set down my coffee mug before I could spill it across the Henderson files spread over my mahogany desk, the desk I'd bought after making partner at 24, the youngest in the firm's history. The achievement I was so proud of because I'd earned it myself. Full scholarship to UCLA Law, summer internships, 100-hour weeks, everything through my own effort while Mom cleaned other people's houses. Self-made. That's what I told myself. That's what everyone told me. The success story. The American dream in action. But now I was looking at 25 years of monthly payments that started exactly 9 months before I was born. I picked up my phone 3 times before actually calling her. Each time I'd start to dial and then stop, thumb hovering over Mom's contact photo. Her smiling outside our old one-bedroom apartment in East LA, the place we'd lived until I graduated college. Small, but proud. Always proud. Mijo? Her voice was warm when she finally answered, that mix of English and slight accent that marked her as someone who'd crossed the border with nothing but determination and a work visa. Working late again? Yeah, Mom. Just reviewing some documents. I tried to keep my voice steady, professional. Hey, random question. You used to work for a family named Henderson, right? In Beverly Hills? The pause was too long. Just a heartbeat too long. Yes. Why do you ask? Her tone had shifted. Careful now. Guarded. Just saw the name in some files. How long did you work there? Many years. It was steady work. Good pay. Each word measured, each word hiding something. I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. 25 years of steady payments. $3,500 monthly. Over $1 million total, paid quietly, consistently, with the regularity of someone fulfilling an obligation. Or buying silence. Mom, did you ever meet the husband, Richard Henderson? I pulled up a photo of him from his campaign website. Tall, silver-haired, confident smile, standing with his perfect family. Wife, 2 kids, golden retriever. The American success story. Another pause. Then, Marcus, why are you asking me this? Because I just calculated that those payments started 9 months before I was born, I wanted to say. Because the father line on my birth certificate is blank for a reason. Because I'm staring at 25 years of hush money disguised as household services. Instead, I said, just curious, I should let you go. Talk tomorrow? Okay, mijo. Don't work too late. She hung up quickly. Too quickly. I sat there in my office, the city lights of Los Angeles spreading out below me like a circuit board of secrets and lies. My laptop screen glowed with evidence of something I wasn't quite ready to name. The Henderson files seemed different now, not just a case about real estate fraud, but something far more personal. My phone buzzed. Email notification. Anonymous sender. Subject line. You should know the whole truth about your employer. I clicked it open. Attached was a file labeled Henderson Cruz Morales, Confidential 1999 2024.pdf. My cursor hovered over the attachment. Everything in my life, my education, my career, my identity as a self-made success story, suddenly felt like it was balanced on the edge of whatever was inside that file. I took a breath and clicked download. The file opened slowly, each page loading like a confession I wasn't ready to hear. But before I could dive into those documents, I found something else. A scanned handwritten letter dated December 1999 in Spanish, from my mother to someone named Maria back in Guadalajara. My Spanish was decent enough to understand the words that would change everything. Rosa Morales had arrived in Los Angeles on a work visa in early 1999, just 19 years old with a high school diploma and dreams bigger than the single suitcase she carried. The Henderson family hired her through an agency that specialized in placing domestic workers in Beverly Hills estates. She'd sent that letter to her sister 3 months after starting, describing the massive house with its pool, the kind family, the steady paycheck that let her send money home. "It's like a dream," she'd written. "Everything I hoped America would be." The next document was dated 6 months later, a different tone entirely. It happened during the Henderson family's annual Christmas corporate dinner. Mrs. Henderson had flown to Connecticut to spend the holidays with her parents, something about a family emergency that turned into a 2-week absence. The house was mostly empty except for staff preparing for a party that Richard Henderson insisted on hosting anyway. Business contacts, local politicians, the kind of networking event that built empires. Mom was 20 years old, working late to clean up after the event. Henderson was 42, successful, charming in that way powerful men are when they want something. The file contained his own words from an email to his attorney written years later. "It was one night, a mistake. She was young, I was drunk, and it happened in the guest house after everyone left. A mistake." That's how he described the moment that created me. 6 weeks later, Rosa realized she'd missed her period. Then another. She bought a test at a pharmacy in East LA, far from Beverly Hills where someone might recognize her. Positive. The second test was positive too. And the third. The file included a photocopy of a note she'd written to Henderson, requesting to speak with him privately. They met in the garden, by the pool, early morning before the rest of the household woke. I found his handwritten notes from that conversation, clinical and cold. R. Confirmed pregnant. Approximately 8 weeks. Wants to keep child. Proposed solution. Continue employment, monthly stipend, absolute discretion required. There was no discussion of marriage, no consideration of acknowledging paternity, just a transaction, negotiated between a powerful man and a teenage immigrant who had no leverage, no family nearby, no real options. Henderson's attorney had drafted a formal confidentiality agreement, pages of legal language that would have given Rosa $50,000 to return to Mexico permanently and resolve the situation independently. But there was a handwritten note in the margin in Henderson's writing. R. refused. Says she's keeping baby and staying in USA, need alternative arrangement. The alternative was simple. Keep her close, keep her quiet, keep her dependent. For the next 25 years, Rosa worked in that Beverly Hills mansion, cleaning the rooms, preparing meals, watching Henderson's legitimate children grow up in the same house where her own son's father pretended not to know him. Every month, $30,500 appeared in her account, enough to survive, never enough to leave, enough to keep her silent about the employer who'd gotten her pregnant and then erased his responsibility with monthly payments disguised as wages. The file contained emails between Henderson and his attorney discussing the Rosa situation over the years. In 2005, R. asked about health insurance for her son, arranged through third-party provider, untraceable to me. In 2012, R's son accepted to UCLA, concerned about exposure, arranging anonymous scholarship through foundation to control financial dependency. That scholarship. My full ride to UCLA Law that I thought I'd earned through merit and hard work. It was him, making sure I stayed in his orbit, making sure Mom stayed grateful, making sure neither of us ever questioned too deeply. One email from 2018 made my blood run cold. Keeping R employed all these years isn't generosity, it's insurance. As long as she's on my payroll, she won't talk. As long as her son benefits from my connections, they both stay quiet. Control through proximity. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking in the silence of my office. It was past midnight now. The LA skyline glittered through my window, beautiful and indifferent. My mother had spent 25 years as a prisoner in plain sight, not locked in a room, but trapped by circumstance, by immigration status, by the calculated kindness of a man who understood that control didn't require chains, just the right amount of money and fear. And me? I was the collateral, the secret that had to be managed, the son whose success was engineered to ensure silence. I looked at my law degree on the wall, my bar certification, my name on the door, Marcus Morales, corporate attorney. Everything I'd built, everything I believed about myself was constructed on a foundation of lies and hush money. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went deeper into Henderson Real Estate's financial records, but now I was seeing everything through a different lens. The fraud case I'd been building wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a pattern of a man who believed rules didn't apply to him. Henderson Real Estate had been awarded multiple contracts for affordable housing developments funded by H.U.D. grants over the past 15 years. Federal money meant for low-income families, filtered through Henderson's companies and into projects that looked good on paper but cut corners everywhere that mattered. Inflated invoices, substandard materials, phantom subcontractors. I'd been tracking $4.2 million in suspicious transactions when I found the old contracts from 2000-2001. The early deals that established Henderson's relationship with federal housing programs. Each contract required witness signatures from household employees to verify the principal's identity for notarization purposes. Rosa Morales. Her signature appeared on 8 different documents between March 2000 and September 2001. I stared at those signatures. My mother's handwriting, slightly uncertain. The letters, careful and deliberate. She would have been pregnant with me when she signed the first ones, holding me as an infant for the later ones, standing in Henderson's home office, probably in her uniform, signing legal documents she likely didn't fully understand while the man who'd gotten her pregnant treated her like just another piece of furniture. Using her as a witness on federal contracts was either incredibly arrogant or incredibly calculated. Maybe both. It tied her to his business dealings, made her complicit in ways she probably never realized. If anything ever went wrong, her signature was there in black and white. By 6 a.m., I gave up pretending I'd work from the office. I grabbed my keys and drove east, away from downtown's glass towers and toward the neighborhood where I grew up. East LA looked different in the early morning light, familiar but strange, like visiting your childhood home and realizing how small everything actually was. Mom's apartment was in the same building where we'd lived together until I was 18. She'd stayed after I left for college, said she liked the neighborhood, liked her neighbors. Now I wondered if there was another reason, if Henderson wanted her in a specific place, easy to monitor, under his control. I knocked at 6:47 a.m. She answered in her bathrobe, hair still in the braid she slept in, eyes widening when she saw me. "Marcus, what's wrong? Did something happen? Can I come in?" She stepped aside, already moving toward the kitchen to make coffee, her automatic response to unexpected visitors. I sat at the small table where I'd done homework for 12 years, where she taught me to read, where we'd celebrated every achievement with pan dulce from the bakery downstairs. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Her hands stilled on the coffee pot. "Mijo. The Henderson family? You worked there for 25 years, right? You told me it was just housekeeping, just steady work." I pulled out my phone, showed her the spreadsheet of payments. "But these aren't housekeeping wages. These are something else." She sat down heavily, not looking at the phone, looking everywhere but at me. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It was complicated. Then help me understand. Because right now, I'm looking at 25 years of payments that started 9 months before I was born, and I'm trying to figure out why a wealthy real estate developer would pay his housekeeper $3,500 every single month for a quarter-century. Marcus, please. Did you know Richard Henderson more than you should have? I used the phrasing carefully, gently, because despite everything, she was still my mother, and I could see she was breaking. She covered her face with her hands, nodded once. The confirmation hit me like a physical thing, even though I'd already known. Knowing and hearing her admit it were different universes. How well did you know him? It was one time, one night. I was young and stupid, and it was a mistake that... She looked up at me, eyes red. That gave me the greatest gift of my life. But Marcus, you have to understand, he had power and I had nothing. I couldn't go back to Mexico. I couldn't lose my visa. I had a baby to think about. So he paid you to stay quiet. He paid me to survive. There's a difference. I pulled out my birth certificate, the one I'd been carrying since last night, slid it across the table. The father line is blank. Not unknown. Blank. That was deliberate, wasn't it? She touched the paper with trembling fingers. He said if I ever put his name down, he'd have me deported and take you. Said he had lawyers who could prove I was unstable, that I'd lose everything. So I left it blank. I left it empty because empty was safer than the truth. 25 years of blank spaces where my father's name should have been. 3 days after my mother's confession, I couldn't stop watching him. Richard Henderson was everywhere. Campaign ads during my morning news, billboards along the 405, social media feeds filled with his polished smile and perfectly rehearsed sound bites. The man running for U.S. Senate on a platform of family values and personal accountability was also the man who'd abandoned his own son for 25 years. I was obsessed. I'll admit that freely. I watched every speech, every interview, every town hall recording I could find online. I'd pour a whiskey, sit on my couch in my downtown apartment, and study the man who was biologically my father like he was evidence in a deposition. His campaign rally in Century City drew over 2,000 people. I watched the live stream on my laptop. Volume turned low, even though I lived alone. Henderson stood on a stage with red, white, and blue banners, American flags positioned perfectly in the camera frame. His wife, Catherine Henderson, former Orange County prosecutor, stood beside him in a cream-colored suit. Their 2 children, both in their early 20s, waved to the crowd with practiced enthusiasm. The legitimate family. The public family. The family that mattered. America was built on the promise that hard work and integrity lead to success. Henderson's voice boomed through my speakers, but we've lost sight of what really matters. Strong families, responsible fathers, communities that hold each other accountable. I almost laughed. Almost. The camera panned across the stage and I froze the frame on Henderson's son, Richard Henderson, Jr., 23 years old according to the campaign website. I pulled up a recent photo of myself, held it next to the screen. Same jawline, same slight widow's peak, same way of standing with weight shifted to the left side. We could be brothers. We were brothers. Half-brothers who'd grown up in different universes separated by about 10 miles and $1 million. I clicked through Henderson's campaign website reading his policy positions. Criminal justice reform, immigration enforcement, tax cuts for small businesses. And there, prominently featured, strengthening family values through paternal responsibility. His key quote, highlighted in bold, "Every child deserves a father who shows up, who takes responsibility, who doesn't run from his obligations. Too many American families are broken because men refuse to step up." The irony was so thick I could taste it. I found an interview from last week on a local morning show. The host, a perky blonde woman, asked Henderson about his family life. "Senator candidate Henderson, you talk a lot about fatherhood on the campaign trail. What does being a father mean to you?" Henderson's expression turned serious. Thoughtful. "Being a father is the most important job I've ever had. It's about being present, being accountable, showing your children through actions, not just words, what integrity looks like. I look at my 2 kids and I think about all the fathers out there who've walked away from their responsibilities, and it breaks my heart. That's not what America should be about." I rewound it, watched it again, and again. The man who'd paid my mother hush money for 25 years. The man who'd threatened her with deportation if she named him as my father. The man who'd kept us close enough to control, but far enough to deny. That man was lecturing America about paternal responsibility. My phone showed the electoral calendar I'd been tracking. California primary election in 21 days. Henderson was leading in every major poll, 8 points ahead of his nearest competitor. The political analysts called him a shoo-in for the Senate seat. His approval ratings among suburban voters, especially fathers and family-oriented demographics, were through the roof. America loved Richard Henderson. They saw a successful businessman who'd built an empire through hard work, a devoted husband and father, a man who represented everything good about the American dream. They didn't see the teenage immigrant he'd gotten pregnant and silenced. They didn't see the son he'd erased from his life story. They didn't see the fraud and manipulation behind the polished exterior. I closed my laptop and walked to my window. LA stretched out below me, millions of people living their lives, completely unaware that one of their favorite political candidates was built on lies. What was I supposed to do with this information? Expose him? Destroy his campaign 3 weeks before the election? Blow up my own life and my mother's in the process? Or stay quiet, like we'd been doing for 25 years, and let him win? My phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. You're not the only one who knows the truth. Check your email. I grabbed my laptop, opened my inbox. New message, sender address just random letters and numbers. Subject line: You deserve to know everything about Richard Henderson. Attached: Henderson. Complete history. .zip. My finger hovered over the download button. Behind me, the TV was still playing campaign coverage. Henderson's voice echoed through my apartment. The truth always matters. Integrity always matters. And I promised to bring both to Washington. I clicked download. The zip file took 43 seconds to download. I watched the progress bar fill while my heart hammered against my ribs. When it finished, I sat there for a full minute before opening it. Sometimes you know that once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you know the truth, you can't go back to the comfortable lies you've been living with. I clicked. Inside were folders organized by year, 1999, 2024. Each one contained documents, emails, scanned letters, financial records, 25 years of secrets, cataloged and preserved by someone who clearly wanted this information to surface. I started with 2000, the year I was born. The first document was an email thread between Henderson and his personal attorney, a man named Gerald Stevens from a white shoe law firm in Beverly Hills. The subject line read, Domestic Employee Situation, Urgent. Henderson's email, sent March 15, 2000 at 11:47 p.m. Jerry, we have a problem. The housekeeper I mentioned is pregnant. Says it's mine. She's refusing the termination option and wants to stay in the country. Need this handled immediately and quietly. What are my options? The response came 2 hours later. Richard, this requires delicate handling. Immigrant domestic workers have limited legal recourse, but deportation threats could backfire. Recommend financial arrangement with ironclad NDA. I'll draft something. I felt sick. The next document was that draft contract Stevens had mentioned. A formal confidentiality and settlement agreement offering Rosa Morales $50,000 in exchange for permanent relocation to country of origin and complete waiver of any claims regarding paternity, child support, or employment. The contract had never been signed. Instead, there was a handwritten note in the margin in Henderson's distinctive scrawl, R. refused, won't leave USA, won't give up baby, says she'll manage alone but wants to keep her job. This is a disaster. Further down the page, another note. New strategy, keep her employed. Pay monthly stipend above wages, maintain control through proximity and financial dependency, cannot let her become independent variable, must monitor situation continuously. I read that line 3 times. Cannot let her become independent variable. My mother wasn't a person to him. She was a variable, a problem to manage, a risk to control. The folder contained a spreadsheet, meticulously maintained, updated monthly for 25 years. Every payment to Rosa Morales, documented in perfect rows. On and on, month after month, year after year. Never late, never missed. $3,500 exactly, transferred on the first of every month like clockwork. Over $1 million total, $1,050,000 to be precise, paid to keep a secret buried. But the document that destroyed me was buried in the 2018 folder. A handwritten note scanned from what looked like Henderson's personal journal. The date was September 12, 2018, right after I'd been accepted to UCLA Law School. The Morales boy got into UCLA Law. Full scholarship, which is good. No financial trail to me. But R called today asking if I could write a recommendation letter for him. Had to decline, obviously, but it made me realize how dangerous this situation is becoming. The kid is smart, ambitious, going into law. What if he starts asking questions? What if he pieces things together? Spoke with Jerry about creating an anonymous scholarship through the Henderson Foundation to supplement his funding. Not charity, insurance. If the boy benefits from my connections and money, indirectly, he stays in our sphere of influence. R stays grateful. Everyone stays quiet. This is why I've kept R employed all these years. People think I'm being kind, keeping the same housekeeper for 2 decades. They don't understand it's tactical. Keep your enemies close, but keep your secrets closer. As long as she's on my payroll, watching her son benefit from opportunities I've quietly arranged, she won't rock the boat. She can't afford to. The boy will never know who his father really is, and that's exactly how it needs to stay. I pushed away from my desk, stood up, paced my apartment. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. Every achievement in my life, college, law school, my job, I'd believed I'd earned it through hard work and merit. My identity was built on being self-made, on rising above circumstances, on proving that you didn't need privilege or connections to succeed. But it was all engineered, all controlled. Henderson had manipulated my entire life from behind the scenes, not out of love or responsibility, but to protect his reputation and political ambitions. I was 25 years old, and I just discovered that my entire existence was someone else's damage control strategy. The last file in the folder was labeled, "I clicked play." The audio file from Henderson's recent phone call with his attorney played through my speakers. Jerry, the election is in 3 weeks. Everything is going perfectly. The polling numbers are excellent, donors are happy, and the endorsements keep rolling in. I'm not going to let some 25-year-old secret destroy what I've built. What about the Morales woman? Rosa? She's fine. Still working at the house, still quiet. I've kept her close all these years for exactly this reason. She knows what happens if she talks. Deportation proceedings, loss of everything she's built here, and her son, Marcus, he's doing well. Big law firm, making good money. They both have too much to lose. You're certain the son doesn't know. He has no idea. The birth certificate is clean. Father Field left blank. No paper trail connecting me to him. Even if he suspected, he'd never be able to prove it. I stopped the recording, grabbed my keys, walked out of my apartment before I could overthink what I was about to do. Henderson was holding a community rally in Pasadena that afternoon. Coffee with the candidate at some upscale cafe on Colorado Boulevard. I'd seen it on his campaign schedule, one of those accessible, down-to-earth events designed to make him look relatable. I showed up at 2:15 p.m. wearing jeans and a UCLA Law hoodie, blending in with the crowd of supporters and curious locals. Henderson worked the room with practiced ease, shaking hands, posing for selfies, drinking from a ceramic coffee mug with his campaign logo printed on it. When he set the mug down to greet someone, I moved. It was surprisingly easy. I walked past the table, picked up a napkin like I was cleaning up, wrapped the mug in it, and kept walking. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. Just another young guy in a crowd of 100 people. I drove straight to a private lab in Glendale that I'd researched the night before. The kind of place that doesn't ask too many questions if you pay in cash. I handed over the coffee mug, a sample of my own DNA via cheek swab, and $500 extra for expedited results. How fast is expedited? I asked the lab technician, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. 48 hours, guaranteed. Maybe sooner. 2 days to confirm what I already knew in my gut. That evening, I drove to UCLA. I hadn't been back to campus in almost a year, but I needed to talk to someone who'd understand the ethical nightmare I was facing. Professor David Chen had taught my legal ethics course during my second year. He was the kind of professor who didn't just teach the rules. He taught you how to think about impossible situations where the rules didn't have clear answers. I found him in his office, buried in papers, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Marcus Morales," he said, looking up with surprise. "I haven't seen you since graduation. How's corporate law treating you?" "It's complicated. Professor Chen, I need advice. Hypothetically." He smiled slightly. "Hypothetically? Of course. Sit down." I laid out the scenario, changing names but keeping the core dilemma intact. Say, a lawyer discovers during a corporate fraud investigation that he has a personal connection to the subject, a biological connection that the subject has hidden for decades. The subject is now running for public office on a platform of integrity and family values. What's the lawyer's obligation? Professor Chen leaned back in his chair, studying me over his glasses. "You're asking me if using the truth to destroy someone is justice or revenge. Yes? And what does the person who was hurt, the one who was kept secret all those years, want?" I thought about my mother, about 25 years of silence, about the fear in her voice when I'd asked about Henderson. She wants peace. She wants it to be over. Then you have to ask yourself, is exposing this truth about giving her peace, or is it about your own need for validation? Because those are very different motivations, Marcus, and only one of them is ethical. I drove home with his words echoing in my head. That night I barely slept. The next day crawled by. And then, at 11:47 p.m. on the second night, my phone buzzed with an email from the lab. Subject: DNA paternity analysis results. Ready for download. My hand shook as I opened the attachment. Pages of technical data, genetic markers, probability calculations, and at the bottom, in bold letters, combined paternity index 99.97%. Probability of paternity 99.97%. Richard Henderson was my biological father. Not probably, not possibly, definitively. I sat there in the dark of my apartment, staring at the screen, holding scientific proof of what my mother had carried alone for 25 years. Proof that Henderson had spent over $1 million trying to bury. My phone sat next to the laptop. I could call him right now, confront him, tell him I knew everything. Or I could wait, plan, use my legal training to figure out the smartest way to handle this. Or I could do what my mother had done for 25 years. Stay silent, stay safe, stay invisible. 3 weeks until the election. 3 weeks to decide what kind of justice looked like. I pulled up Henderson's campaign website. His smiling face promised integrity and accountability to California voters. I opened a new document and started writing down everything I knew, everything I could prove. Armed with DNA proof, I went back into Henderson Real Estate's corporate files with new eyes. What I found made the personal betrayal look like just the beginning. The Henderson Foundation, his supposedly charitable organization that funded scholarships for underprivileged students, had given out exactly 47 anonymous merit scholarships over the past 15 years. I pulled the recipient list from publicly available tax filings and started cross-referencing names. 47 scholarships. 47 students who'd received between $10,000 and $25,000 annually for college expenses. The Foundation's mission statement talked about supporting tomorrow's leaders and giving back to the community. But when I dug deeper into the recipients, a pattern emerged that made my stomach turn. 32 of those 47 students had parents or guardians who worked for Henderson companies. Not just any employees, people who'd witnessed something, signed something, or knew something that could potentially be problematic. The scholarship wasn't charity. It was leverage. My name was on that list. Marcus Morales, UCLA Law School, $15,000 annually for 3 years. Anonymous donor through Henderson Foundation. I'd sent a thank you letter to the foundation. I remembered writing it, being so grateful for the support that let me focus on studies instead of taking on more debt. I'd kept a copy in my files because I was proud of it, proof that merit and hard work got recognized. Now I understood. That scholarship wasn't recognition. It was insurance. One more thread tying me and my mother to Henderson's web of control. But the discovery that broke something inside me came from the household employment records. Henderson had employed exactly 7 domestic workers from Latin America over the past 25 years. Rosa Morales was the only one who'd stayed the entire time. The other 6 had each worked for periods ranging from 8 months to 3 years before leaving to pursue other opportunities. I found 2 of them on social media. Both lived in California, both had children who would be around my age. I sent careful professional messages introducing myself as an attorney investigating potential labor law violations at Henderson Properties. Would they be willing to talk? Maria Gutierrez responded within 2 hours. She'd worked for the Hendersons from 2003 to 2005. She had a daughter, born in 2004, who she'd raised alone. When I asked if she'd received any ongoing payments from Henderson after leaving employment, she went silent on the chat for a long time. Then, "How did you know about that?" Another woman, Carmen Reyes, had worked there from 2008 to 2011. She had a son born in 2009. Same pattern, monthly payments continuing long after employment ended. Same non-disclosure requirements, same threats about immigration status if they ever talked. Henderson hadn't just abandoned me, he'd made a pattern of it. I sat in my office, looking at the evidence spread across my desk like pieces of a conspiracy that nobody else could see. Financial records, DNA results, testimony from other women, corporate fraud documentation. It was all connected. Henderson's entire empire built on exploiting vulnerable people and using money to ensure their silence. That night, I drove to my mother's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and knew. "You found out everything," she said quietly. "Not everything, but enough. Mom, why didn't you tell me there were others?" She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "Because I thought if you knew, you'd do something that would hurt you. I've spent 25 years protecting you from this, Marcus." "Protecting me? Mom, he controlled our entire lives. The scholarship I thought I earned? He paid for it to keep us quiet. Every opportunity I thought I'd fought for? He was pulling strings behind the scenes to make sure we stayed dependent and grateful." "I know." Her voice broke. "You think I don't know? Every month that money showed up in my account, I knew what it was. I knew what it meant. But Marcus, we survived. You got educated. You became successful. Isn't that worth something? Not if it's built on lies." She reached across the table, grabbed my hand. "Then what are you going to do? Destroy him? Destroy yourself in the process? Because that's what happens, mijo. People like Henderson don't lose quietly. They take everyone down with them." I pulled out my laptop, showed her the DNA results, the evidence of other women, the pattern of manipulation spanning decades. He's running for Senate on a platform of family values and integrity. In 3 weeks, California's going to vote for a man who spent 25 years abandoning his own children and buying silence from the women he exploited. Someone needs to stop him. And that someone is you? I'm a lawyer, Mom. I have evidence. I have standing. I have proof. I met her eyes, and I'm tired of being his dirty little secret. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Okay, what do you need from me?" That's when I knew I wasn't doing this alone anymore. I needed an ally, someone with the platform and credibility to make this story impossible to ignore. That's how I ended up in the LA Times building on Spring Street, sitting across from Jennifer Kim, investigative journalist. Kim had broken the story on 3 separate California politicians in the past 5 years. She was known for meticulous research, unimpeachable sources, and a reputation for only publishing stories she could prove beyond any doubt. "So, let me make sure I understand," she said, reviewing the documents I'd spread across her desk. "Richard Henderson, current Senate frontrunner, has been paying hush money to his former housekeeper for 25 years to hide the fact that he fathered her child. And that child is you." "Correct. And you have DNA proof, financial records, emails admitting to the relationship, and testimony from at least 2 other women who experienced similar situations. Everything's documented. Bank transfers, dates, amounts. The pattern is undeniable." Kim leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Why now? You could have sat on this. Let him win, collected your piece of his estate through a paternity suit, stayed out of the spotlight. Because he's running on family values and paternal responsibility while he's spent 25 years denying his own son. Voters deserve to know who they're actually voting for. She nodded slowly. I'll need to verify everything independently. Interview your mother, contact the other women, review the financial records with our forensics team. If this story runs and something's wrong, it destroys both our credibility. I understand. How long? 48 hours. Maybe less. That gave me time for the other part of my plan. I called David Morrison, a family law attorney I'd met at a bar association event last year. He specialized in paternity cases, particularly complex ones involving wealthy defendants who didn't want to be found. Marcus, what you're describing is a forced paternity acknowledgement suit, Morrison explained over coffee at a cafe in Century City. California law allows adult children to establish paternity even decades after birth. With DNA evidence this strong, Henderson won't have legal grounds to contest. The question is, do you want to be legally recognized as his son? Did I? Part of me wanted nothing to do with his name, his legacy, his tainted bloodline. But another part, the part that had lived 25 years as a secret, wanted the public acknowledgement. Wanted the record to show that Richard Henderson had a son he'd abandoned. Yes, I said. I want it on the record. Then we file immediately. Once it's in the system, it becomes public record. Anyone searching court documents will find it. File it tomorrow. I want it to hit the docket the day before the election. Morrison raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive timing. He's had 25 years to do the right thing. I think aggressive is appropriate. The next step was the hardest. I called Henderson's campaign office and requested a meeting, claiming I was a corporate attorney interested in making a significant donation from my firm. They scheduled me for the following afternoon, 2 days before the election. I showed up at his campaign headquarters in a high-rise on Figueroa Street wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio. The office buzzed with pre-election energy, volunteers making calls, staffers running between desks, campaign posters covering every wall. Henderson's assistant led me to a private conference room. He arrived 5 minutes later, all confidence and charisma, hand extended. Mr. Morales, pleasure to meet you. I understand your firm is interested in supporting the campaign. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? He'd never looked at me in his life. Just another 20-something Latino guy in a city full of them. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I pulled out the DNA test and placed it on the conference table between us. My name is Marcus Morales. I'm the son of Rosa Morales, your housekeeper of 25 years. I think you know why I'm here. I watched the color drain from his face, watched recognition and panic flash across his features in quick succession. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't, I cut him off. I have 25 years of bank transfers, emails between you and your attorney discussing the Rosa situation, testimony from 2 other women you paid off the same way, and DNA proof with 99.97% probability of paternity. I know everything. Henderson sat down slowly, his political persona cracking. What do you want? Money? I can write you a check right now. Name your price. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. 500,000. 1 million. Whatever it takes to make this go away before Tuesday. I stood up, gathered my documents. This goes public tomorrow. The LA Times is running the full story. I filed a paternity suit that hits public records Monday morning. And on Election Day, voters are going to know exactly who Richard Henderson really is. His face hardened. You have no idea what you're doing. I will destroy you and your mother. I have lawyers, resources, and I have the truth. Let's see which one wins. Election Eve. Henderson's campaign had rented out Crypto.com arena for his final rally, a massive show of force with 5,000 supporters, live streaming across every platform, primetime coverage on local news stations. Jennifer Kim's story had broken that morning. Senate candidate's 25-year secret, hush money, hidden son, and a pattern of abandoned children. It was trending on Twitter within an hour. Major networks were picking it up by noon. But Henderson's campaign was in full damage control, calling it unsubstantiated allegations and last-minute political sabotage. He was still holding the rally, still pretending everything was fine. Kim had gotten me a press credential, easier than I expected once her editor understood the story's full scope. I stood in the media section with my mother beside me, both of us wearing visitor badges, both of us invisible in the crowd of reporters and cameras. The arena was packed. Red, white, and blue everywhere. American flags, campaign banners, thousands of people who still believed in Richard Henderson's carefully constructed image. The energy was electric, defiant, his supporters rallying around their candidate against what they saw as unfair attacks. Henderson took the stage at 7 p.m. to thunderous applause. His wife, Catherine, stood beside him, though I noticed she stayed a careful 2 feet away. Political theater. His children waved from the side of the stage, their smiles looking strained under the bright lights. California. Henderson's voice boomed through the speakers. Tomorrow, we make history. Tomorrow we send a message that integrity matters, that family matters, that truth matters. The crowd roared. I felt my mother's hand grip mine. Henderson launched into his standard speech about values and accountability, but his voice had an edge tonight. Defensive, angry. You've heard the lies being spread about me. Desperate, last-minute attacks from people who can't win on the issues. But I'm here to tell you, Mr. Henderson. I was on my feet, microphone in hand before I could second-guess myself. I have a question. Security started moving toward me, but the cameras had already swung in my direction. Live television. They couldn't just drag me out without creating an even bigger scene. Henderson squinted against the lights. Yes, you in the press section. I stepped into the aisle where everyone could see me, where the cameras could get a clear shot. My name is Marcus Morales, and this is my mother, Rosa Morales. I gestured to where she stood, trembling but present. She worked in your home for 25 years. Do you recognize her? The arena went quiet. You could hear the hum of the sound system, the shuffle of 5,000 people holding their breath. Henderson's face went white. Security, I'm your son. My voice carried through the microphone, clear and steady. You paid my mother $3,500 every month for 25 years to keep that secret. You threatened her with deportation if she ever named you as my father. You abandoned me while building a political career on family values. The giant screens flanking the stage, meant to show Henderson's face during his speech, now showed mine. Me and my mother, standing together in front of thousands of people and millions watching online. Those are false accusations, Henderson stammered. I pulled out my phone, connected it to Kim's laptop that she'd positioned strategically in the press area. The arena screens flickered and changed. Now they showed bank records. Transfer after transfer. 25 years of payments in neat rows, then emails. Then the DNA test results with 99.97% probability highlighted in yellow. These are your bank records, obtained through legal discovery, your emails discussing how to control the Rosa situation, and DNA proof that you are my biological father, all of it verified independently by the LA Times. The crowd's energy shifted. Confusion, shock, anger, but not at me, at Henderson, at the man on stage whose carefully built facade was crumbling in real time on national television. Catherine Henderson walked off stage, just turned and left. Henderson reached for her, but she was gone, his children following, the image of his perfect family literally falling apart on live television. This is a setup, Henderson shouted into his microphone. I won't be. You had 25 years to do the right thing, I said. You chose silence. You chose money. You chose your political ambitions over your own son. California deserves to know who you really are. Security finally reached me, but it was too late. The damage was done. Every camera in the arena had captured everything. The hashtag Henderson Exposed was trending worldwide within minutes. As they escorted me out, I looked back once. Henderson stood alone on that massive stage, the arena emptying around him, his campaign imploding in the most public way possible. 25 years of secrets ended in less than 10 minutes. Henderson lost the election by 22 points, the largest margin in California Senate race history. By midnight on Election Day, he'd conceded with a brief statement released through his attorney. He never appeared in public again. The fallout was immediate and total. Catherine Henderson filed for divorce within 72 hours, her attorney releasing a statement about fundamental betrayals of trust and family. The IRS opened an investigation into the Henderson Foundation's scholarship program. The SEC started looking into Henderson Real Estate's federal housing contracts. Everything I'd uncovered became part of multiple federal investigations, but the part that mattered most to me happened quietly, in a Los Angeles County courthouse 3 months after the election. Judge Maria Santos reviewed the DNA evidence, the documentation, and the testimony. The proceedings took less than an hour. Henderson didn't even show up. His attorney appeared on his behalf, waiving all contest to the paternity claim. "Mr. Morales," Judge Santos said, looking at me over her reading glasses, "the court finds clear and convincing evidence of biological paternity. Richard Henderson is hereby legally recognized as your father with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Do you wish to change your legal name to include his surname?" I glanced at my mother sitting in the gallery. She nodded, but her expression said, "Your choice." "No, Your Honor, I'll keep my mother's name. Morales is the name of the parent who actually raised me." Judge Santos smiled slightly. "Understandable. The court recognizes Marcus Morales as the biological son and legal heir of Richard Henderson. This judgment is entered into permanent record. Legal acknowledgement. Not love, not relationship, not family in any meaningful sense, but truth. Official, documented truth that could never be erased. The financial settlement came through Henderson's attorneys. They offered $2, $5 million to my mother, what they calculated as 25 years of back child support plus interest, with a strict confidentiality agreement attached. Mom looked at the contract for a long time. Then she said, "No confidentiality clause. I've been silent long enough." They paid it anyway. $2.5 million, no strings attached. She bought a house in Pasadena with a garden and extra bedrooms for the grandchildren she hoped to have someday. After 25 years in that one-bedroom apartment in East L.A., she finally had space to breathe. Maria and Carmen, the other 2 women who'd come forward, received similar settlements. Their sons were recognized, compensated, freed from secrets they'd carried without even knowing it. As for me, I left the corporate law firm, took the inheritance I was legally entitled to as Henderson's acknowledged son, not all of it, just enough, and opened my own practice. Morales Law Group, specializing in labor exploitation, immigration cases, and protecting workers from exactly the kind of abuse my mother had endured. My first client was a domestic worker from El Salvador whose employer had threatened her with deportation after she reported wage theft. We won. Then came another case, and another. Word spread in the immigrant community. Marcus Morales helps people who have nowhere else to turn. Henderson himself disappeared from public life entirely. Last I heard, he was living in a condo in Santa Barbara, running what was left of his real estate business from a distance. His legitimate children wanted nothing to do with him. His political career was finished. His reputation was destroyed. I don't feel triumphant about that. Mostly, I feel tired, relieved, free. 6 months after the election, my mother and I planted roses in her new garden. Red ones, her favorite. She worked the soil with her hands, the same hands that had cleaned Henderson's mansion for 25 years. "Do you regret it?" she asked me. "Everything that happened? You could have had a quiet life." I thought about it. About the scholarship I thought I'd earned. About the lies I'd lived with. About the moment on that arena stage when 25 years of silence finally broke. "No," I said. "The truth always matters more than comfort." She smiled, patted my hand with her dirt-covered fingers. "Then I did something right, raising you." That evening, I drove past Crypto.com Arena where the confrontation had happened. The building stood massive and ordinary, hosting a basketball game now. Life moved on. The world kept turning. But somewhere in California, 7 kids who'd grown up as secrets now had their names on official records. 7 women who'd been silenced by power and money were free to tell their stories. And 1 Senate seat was filled by someone who actually deserved it. Henderson had spent 25 years building an empire on lies. It took one night to tear it down. And in the end, The only thing that remained was the truth. Messy, painful, but finally free. The truth always finds a way out. Sometimes it just needs someone brave enough to speak it.